update you on the latest on the ground. The G20 group is having a conference with African countries looking to increase economic cooperation. And an urgent warning. The UN says more than 7 million children across the world are suffering in detention centres. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, after months of delays and speculation, South Africa's power utility, Eskom, now has a CEO. And in sports, Nigeria's Super Eagles on track for AFCON qualification out of Group L. We begin in Mali, where the army says a militant attack has killed 24 soldiers near to the border with Niger. 29 others were wounded. The soldiers came under attack on Monday in the northern Gao region. They were on patrol during a joint operation with troops from Niger. 17 militants were also killed. This comes just weeks after militants attacked a military base and killed 54 soldiers. No group has claimed responsibility over Monday's assault. Mali has been under threat from militants affiliated with Al-Qaeda and ISIL trying to gain a foothold. Well, staying with security matters, bandits have attacked a village in Nigeria's northwestern state of Zamfara, killing at least 14 people. Residents say the death toll could be much higher. They say the gunman shot many people, including children, indiscriminately. The hours-long attack began late on Sunday and continued into Monday. Zamfara police spokesman Mohammed Shehu believes that it could be a retaliatory attack following a clash earlier this month between the bandits and vigilantes based in Karaye. Well, CGTN's Phil Ehaze is in Abuja for us, where he is following the story. Phil, what's the latest you have on the Zamfara state attacks?
Well, thank you, Karen. What we know is that these attacks happened on Sunday evening, late on Sunday evening at a local government known as Gumi. And according to official statement by the police, the government, at least 18 people have lost their lives in this recent attack. Although locals and, some reports from locals and, sources on ground say it could be way more than the official figures so far, because that attack happened for quite a number of time or a duration before security operatives were, seen at that particular environment. So, but we know that so far it actually has a semblance of a reprisal attack, as you rightly said in the report. The statement from the police, spokesperson Mohammed Shehu says that just a few weeks before now, that's about 2 weeks ago, an earlier attack occurred in in Zamfara state, which claimed also the lives of about 9 people suspected to be, herders from the Fulani, from Fulani tribe, and therefore they took laws into their hands to coordinate a reprisal attack. But of course, investigations are on, and until that has been proved by the security operatives, it will be difficult to really say who exactly is behind these attacks.
So, as you say, it looks like it's a reprisal attack. We don't yet know who's responsible, although you have mentioned the Fulani tribe. How has the government responded to this?
Well, so far, according to the police spokesperson, there's actually a combined force of the police, the Army, Navy, Air Force, the Civil Defense, and a couple of local vigilante team. This operation has been in existence for some time now, since the governor of Zamfara State, Matawale, emerged in May. It's called Operation Puff Adder, and they were solely put together to put an end, to banditry attacks or banditry banditry in Zamfara State. They've been combing bushes, combing, surrounding areas to, connected to that, the vicinity of the attack, and they've been combing the area to try to arrest perpetrators of the attack. And then the government also has responded by taking bodies of the victims and even the injured to hospitals for autopsy and treatment. You'd recall that the governor actually, was able to achieve some sort of truce between the warring parties once he emerged as the governor. And since then, we haven't seen this kind of attack, taking place in the state. It's just so sad that this is happening at the time, and we hope that that peace agreement is still in existence. It is not breached by this attack that has occurred.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Phil Haza there for us in Abuja. Moving on to other news now. The G20 compact with Africa is underway in the German capital, Berlin. The initiative looks to increase cooperation between Africa and G20 member states. It also looks to create joint projects to boost African economies. 12 African countries are taking part. Ghana, Morocco and Rwanda are among those present there. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will discuss bilateral relations with the German Chancellor. Angela Merkel has played a key role in building a framework for cooperation between the G20 and African countries. Well, CGTN's Guy Henderson is in Berlin for us, and he's been following the conference. He joins us now on the line. Guy, the G20 Compact with Africa meeting started yesterday. Tell us about the initiative.
Well, something started in 2017 when Germany was the president, overseeing the presidency of the G20 at the time. And the idea was basically to try and find a new way to build sort of sustainable economic growth and therefore employment and therefore essentially stability, because of course Europe is surrounded by a certain level, arguably an increasing level of instability at the moment. So the idea was, bring about benefits, stability, economic growth in these places, and therefore that will benefit both Africa and Europe, and perhaps also the G20 more widely. As you say, African heads of state started arriving on Monday evening. They are now, at this very moment, meeting with the German Chancellor and I think this is telling, at a building that hosts a number of German business associations. Ultimately, the aim here is to get governments in African countries talking to the private sector in Germany, in Europe, in other parts of the G20 about what changes they can make legally, in regulatory terms, to make investment, private sector investment, more attractive and essentially more realistic. So the idea to unlock Africa's economic potential to the benefit of both.
And Guy, tell us a bit more about the participants and what is actually on the agenda.
So who's coming firstly? 12 countries in all, African countries in all, are part of this compact with Africa set up. And it's quite an interesting mix because, for example, you don't have either of what I think are still the two largest African economies, South Africa and Nigeria. They're not part of this setup. You do have a few, particularly further north, larger African economies. So Egypt, Ghana is in there, Morocco, another relatively stable and relatively large economy. But then you have these sort of economic minnows, if you like, certainly in global terms, countries like Guinea, Burkina Faso. So a mixture perhaps of the kind of countries that can kind of drive this process forward because they have that slightly larger scale, with those countries that perhaps are more and most in need of this kind of economic investment. Agenda, you touched on this, the sort of business meeting this morning, then they'll be meeting, all of the African heads of state will be getting together at the German Chancellery, and then a big state dinner at a place called Schloss Bellevue, which is just outside, an official residence just outside Berlin in the evening. And then the focus of the final day here is actually bilateral. It's between the Egyptian president and the German Chancellor. Compact with Africa, I'm sure, part of the discussion, but given the Egyptian president's influence in North Africa and beyond, I'm sure that the conversation will move on to other issues as well.
And Guy, finally, what are the expectations of the meeting?
Well, it's interesting because this was a thing that was set up in 2017, and we're now a few years in, and there are sort of growing questions around. Yes, okay, this was sort of a new and innovative idea at the time, but is it actually working in practice? And I think there are sort of some early indications that perhaps it's taking a little longer, at least, or proving a little tougher to actually attract that investment to African countries than perhaps its architects had originally envisaged. So, there are official statistics that show that, yes, investment's up on last year from Germany specifically into Africa, but it's still lower, those investment rates, than they were back in 2016. And so there's some African governments that are starting to say, look, we had a conversation with business leaders, with politicians in Europe, in the G20. You asked us to make changes. We've done that. Where is the money? Where's the investment? It's not materializing as we want it to. And so part of the discussion here, I think, is about trying to work out, are there changes that are needed to improve that? Is it just a case of this being a long-term investment plan? It's just going to take time. Or is it that in practice, the theory just doesn't stand up to scrutiny?
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Guy Henderson there for us in Berlin following the G20 Compact with Africa meeting. The South African development community may have to go beyond making resolutions and engage the countries that have imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe. That's according to South Africa's International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor. Pandor has convened a symposium of academics and diplomats advising on the role that South Africa will play in finding ways to help Zimbabwe's economy. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
The symposium focused on South Africa's role in finding ways to help Zimbabwe's economy to recover. Academics and diplomats gathered in Pretoria with the hope that they will be able to help the government assist Zimbabwe's sanctions to be lifted. South Africa is firmly of the view that Zimbabwe's challenges can only be fixed by the country's millions of citizens, assisted by friendly neighbors like South Africa and other countries in the region.
The theme of the meeting, as indicated by those who've spoken before me, indicates our belief that we will have to find ways of acting in solidarity with Zimbabwe. It, I think, reflects our posture, certainly as DIRCO and as South Africa, that multilateral solidarity and practical informed action are the best means toward resolving international problems.
Pandor emphasized that it is imperative that Zimbabwe's economic solutions go hand in hand with a political resolution.
By all accounts, there are serious and seemingly intractable political factors that might need attention, and in fact do need attention, if solutions are to be effective or implementable. The political formations in Zimbabwe remain at loggerheads and have apparent deep antipathy toward each other, which makes joint decision-making and planning extremely difficult.
South Africa supported the resolution of the August SADC summit, which set aside October 25 as a day for calling for the end to sanctions against Zimbabwe. Pretoria is, however, of the view that the regional bloc may have to approach the institutions and nations which slapped Zimbabwe with the sanctions and embargoes.
SADC might need to go beyond the resolution we adopted and engage those who have imposed sanctions to agree on lifting these sanctions to support the recovery of critical sectors such as health, agriculture, finance, and of course the social sectors of education.
The minister says South Africa has full appreciation of the difficult challenges faced in Zimbabwe. Economic sanctions are not only felt in Zimbabwe, but by the SADC region as a whole. It therefore remains critical that the region is involved in seeking solutions. Pandor says South Africa is ready to assist, but without imposing on Harare. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Security continues to be a pressing issue in Libya. Months of insecurity have displaced thousands, disrupting an already fragile peace in the capital, Tripoli. The head of the United Nations support mission in Libya has called on Security Council members to stop interfering in the conflict.
Over 7 months ago, troops loyal to Eastern Military Commander General Khalifa Haftar started their mission to take control of the capital city, Tripoli. The UN-backed government of National Accord fought back, resulting in months of insecurity. Both sides enjoy support from different international countries. Ghassan Salameh, the head of the UN support mission in Libya, called on the Security Council to form a unified front.
Ending the conflict and agreeing to the way forward is a realistic prospect. All that is needed now is for you, the international community, to come together to provide the necessary umbrella for the Libyan parties themselves to join hands to end the conflict and resume dialogue.
Even on the ground, the conflict has taken on an international dimension. A recent airstrike on a biscuit factory killed several people, including citizens from Niger, Egypt, and Bangladesh. The UN-backed government blamed troops loyal to General Haftar for the attack.
This situation, as you know, is a result of the disagreements over the situation in Libya in this council, whose members should all work to reach a form of an agreement through which atrocities and crimes in my country can be stopped, and to follow a unified strategy that would face up to those who are trying to prevent Libyans from reaching an agreement, to unify them and start the process of building a modern state.
Several countries, including Kuwait, called on member states to respect the current arms embargo. Astatal, CGTN.
We are going to a short break. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including... With 100 protesters still barricaded inside Hong Kong's Polytechnic University, police say they will arrest anyone over 18 who remains. And an ecological plastic waste island is floating off Côte d'Ivoire.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Protesters barricaded inside a university in Hong Kong have been given medical attention after days of violent clashes with police. Authorities have allowed medical workers into the Polytechnic University campus. About 100 protesters remain inside following the arrest of hundreds of others. Protesters have turned the campus into a front line against the police, throwing petrol bombs and shooting arrows. Police say that they will arrest everyone over the age of 18 remaining inside the university. Several protesters are reported to have tried to escape through sewage tunnels. Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam is calling on those who are still on campus to leave and to help bring about a peaceful resolution. CGTN reporter He Weiwei has more.
And 200 of them are under 18 years old, so they have left the campus accompanied by their friends or relatives after having their identities registered by the police and photo taken. And the police said they still reserve the right to further investigate this issue in the future. And for the rest 400 people, they are over 18 years old, so they were immediately arrested at the site. And the police also estimates that there were still about 100 people remaining inside the campus. So the police is trying to persuade them to drop their weapon and come out from the campus voluntarily. And also Caroline stressed that there are two principles in dealing with the situation. The first is peaceful. She repeated in Cantonese 3 times that she hopes very much that this whole situation can be resolved peacefully. And the second principle is that she wants the injured people can be treated in a more humanitarian way. And that is why the government also arranged some medical services at the site. And Caroline's speech came after the Polytech University have been at the headlines for the local media for over a day after the clashes, the standoff between the protesters and the policemen for over 24 hours. And Caroline expressed her concern about the campus becoming a front line of violence and turmoil. Now let's listen to what Caroline said at the presser.
What's more shocking is that most of the weapons were in fact made inside the campus. As far as I know, thousands of unused petrol bombs were found in one of the universities, and dangerous chemicals were stolen from the laboratories. Some campuses even have become training grounds for protesters to practice how to attack the police. One school official told me that among the rioters occupying the campus, only a small number of them are actually students. This situation is very concerning.
And at a presser, when she was asked why she didn't herself go to the campus to deal with the situation, Karam said that she knew that once she appeared in campus, that could worsen the situation. So she didn't show up, but she still kept very close contact with the police.
The Hong Kong police say they want a peaceful resolution to the standoff at the Polytechnic University, adding they'll take a humanitarian approach while dealing with the protesters.
First of all, we would very much like a peaceful resolution to the case. Secondly, we would like to adopt a flexible and humanitarian approach in handling the incident. First, on peaceful resolution. For people occupying Polytechnic University, some of them were under 18, they were minors, so there was a special arrangement for the minors. If the minors leave PolyU, we would first take a photo of them and take down their information, and then we'll let them leave. We would not make immediate arrest, but we reserve the right to take action in future. As for adults, they would be arrested. The force used by the police is always determined by the threat we face. Under any circumstance, the police would not like to resort to force. We would like to see a peaceful resolution of incidents.
Well, the police also said during a Tuesday press conference that 1,100 people had been arrested and 600 had left voluntarily. They included 400 adults and 200 minors. Police confiscated 3,900 petrol bombs in the Chinese University of Hong Kong. 6 police officers were injured in yesterday's operation. Moving on to other news now. In Côte d'Ivoire, a French entrepreneur has recycled the pile of plastic waste that floats in Abidjan's lagoon to build an ecological and fun island. He hopes the innovation will spur others to find profitable ways of reusing the capital's waste. CGTN's Terry Wangari has more.
The floating island in the middle of Abidjan's lagoon is a place to relax, enjoy a drink, swim in one of 2 pools, and even spend the night. It is touted by its owner, Eric Becker, as a paradise island and a perfect hideout for the weekend on the Facebook page. But what makes it extra special is that it's artificial, ecological, and floats atop 700,000 recycled bottles tightly packed in boxes. Becca had planned to start a business in Côte d'Ivoire, building a leisure catamaran in 2012. But what he found was miles of waste and plastic bottles along the lagoon's shores and decided to do his small part in trying to clean it up by building a tiny leisure village instead.
The floating island started to take shape in 2012 when I had a catamaran construction project. I was studying this, and people from the marina were all on the lagoon's edge, and so that's how I discovered the lagoon, its advantages and its disadvantages, such as the pollution, and so little by little, my idea of building a travel boat turned into how to build a system. A village corner by using the pollution in the lagoon, namely the drums.
It took 6 years for Becca to collect discarded bottles, even sandals, and then test their strength and viability.
We pick up bottles and floating waste to build a little on the floating island, but if we wanted to get into the waste management, we will need to sort out the waste. For example, there are plastic bags that we do not use and can be used for something else. There is biodegradable waste that can be used to make fire or compost, for example, branches. So normally, you'd need to do more serious work than what we are doing, but all we can do is pick up part of the waste which we can recycle.
The island weighs around 200 tons and is equipped with solar panels for electricity. He also makes compost to grow some grass on the island. Water has to be pumped in from the land because the lagoon water is too polluted. For the moment, Becca says he has around 100 guests a week and most of his trade is at the weekends, and they seem to love the experience.
It is a beautiful project, and I think in future there will be several floating islands like this one, since the Lagoon Planning Department is very positive about these types of projects. So, we could have floating islands all over Côte d'Ivoire, and that would be great for us.
It's really innovative. Ecologically, it was something that was really worth thinking about. It's the place to be, sometimes even because it proves that nothing is wasted, nothing gained, everything can be preserved. So they did something really innovative, and I had to come and see it for myself up close.
Becca is keen to promote his system to encourage others to recycle more.
If we want to resolve the problem, then we're just a drop in the ocean. To resolve the problem, we would have to treat 100% of the waste instead of the 50% at the moment, and look at different sectors.
He says he will continue to look for new ways to improve this drop of paradise and make it 100% green. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
The United Nations Human Rights Agency says more than 7 million children worldwide suffer abuse at detention centres, including those run by immigration authorities and police. The agency has issued a report ahead of the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child.
The UN Global Study on Children Deprived of Liberty is pushing for children's rights. It says millions of minors are exposed to unimaginable violence and deprived of liberty in detention centers. It's now calling on governments to safeguard their rights.
States should establish special child justice systems. That means special child courts, special child detention facilities where they are separated from adults, but also special police officers, for instance, with a particular expertise in how to deal with children in conflict with the law. Article 37b of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is very, very clear. It says that the detention of children shall only be a measure of last resort and only if absolutely necessary for the shortest appropriate period of time.
At least 330,000 children worldwide are detained for migration-related purposes per year. At least 77 states are known to still detain children for such reasons, while at least 21 states do not or claim not to do so. Sadly, most centers are very often adult facilities.
Children should live up or grow up in families, their own families, foster families, family-type settings, and not in institutions were they in fact deprived of liberty, where there's a strict discipline, there's a lot of violence, there's no love, etc.
The data of the study was collected from around 274 children in 22 different countries. Chamhono, CGTN.
Africa is holding its largest scientific meeting on population issues. The 8th Africa Population Conference has begun in Uganda. It's focused on harnessing the continent's population dynamics for sustainable development. All stakeholders will have an opportunity to explore ways and means of applying research evidence to improve the well-being of the African people. Delegates are calling on the continent to invest in the youth population while implementing various development programs. The 5-day event will come to a close this Friday after key resolutions have been adopted by all African countries participating.
Let me make an appeal that Africa should continue to invest in its people, its human capital, in the realization that our growing population is a strategic contribution to the common market within our region, within our continent.
The member states of the United Nations demanded a specific target, which is the Sustainable Development Goal target number 17.18 on data. It emphasizes the need for high quality, timely, reliable data disaggregated by income, by gender, by age, race, ethnicity, migratory status, disability, geographic location, and other characteristics so relevant in national contexts. And critical, population data are needed for 98 of the SDG targets, and it's only when governments can generate subnational population projections that we can anticipate the future in all its diversity.
All the business news coming up for you after the break, including after months of delays and speculation, South Africa's power utility Eskom now has a CEO. And world exporters debate on trade opportunities under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
In South Africa, Andre de Ruyter has been named the new CEO of state power company Eskom. The appointment of the 51-year-old comes as the debt-laden firm has missed several deadlines to find a new chief. De Ruyter has been heading packaging firm Nampak. He'll take up the new post in January. Eskom has been looking for a new leader since Pakamani Hadebe left in July, the 10th person to vacate the post in the past decade. After the announcement, yields on Eskom's 2028 dollar bonds climbed to more than 7%. That's the highest in months. Zimbabwe's Apex Bank has cut the key interest rate from 70% to 35%. It's a bid to revive an economy crippled by years of mismanagement. The reduction is considered to complement the 2020 national budget, which is premised on productivity, job creation and economic growth. Measures have been implemented to fund the productive sectors by directing excess liquidity in the financial system. Zimbabwe's economy has been forecast to contract this year despite the reforms adopted by the monetary and fiscal authorities. Still, the rate cut could bolster commodities prices in a country that faces hyperinflation estimated at 380%. The World Export Development Forum has begun in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. More than 1,000 participants from over 100 countries are expected at the event. The theme of the meeting is trade and investing in one Africa. The forum comes just after the Africa Continental Free Trade Area was launched in July. The first day is dedicated to empowerment of women in trade. The International Trade Centre has brought together women traders under the title She Trades Global 2019. Well, the event runs to Friday, and CGTN's Hannah Viviers is at the forum now and joins us with the latest. Hello to you, Hannah. What's the latest from there, and what should we expect in the coming days?
Thank you so much, Karen. Well, today, as you mentioned, there was a She Trades Global, which was really focused on women entrepreneurs on the continent, and also just speaking about the opportunities that the African Continental Free Trade Area is going to give those women and how they can be included in that process. But one of the things that really stood out for me was the executive director of the International Trade Center saying that as the practicalities of that African Continental Free Trade Area unfold, women will have to get organized at continental level to experience real inclusion in trade on the continent. And that just came through so strongly, and it came through different speakers who said that about how they would be able to get into the market and just be able to sit at the table. But while women entrepreneurs were such a huge focus today, we do know that entrepreneurship is not the only thing that can develop the continent, even though it is a very key issue on the continent. One of the ways that the Ethiopian government is dealing when it comes to development is creating employment for women, and that being a huge issue on the continent. And so joining us for more on Ethiopia that is doing a lot to employ women. Just speak to us about how much impact that the center that you went to is having on employing women in the country.
Well, Hannah, the practicality of the whole issue is that Ethiopia is investing in a lot of industrial parks. With one of the main reasons is, as the government has outlined, is the fact that employment has become a big issue. There's a high level of unemployment. So if we've, like we visited yesterday with a delegation from China, one of the industrial parks where we visited, we saw a lot of women who have been employed. People have got jobs. I mean, for example, we went to a textile company where we saw women who are sewing, women are the ones ironing, women are the ones cleaning, women are the ones doing everything within the industrial parks. So there is an intentional move by the investors in the industrial parks to employ women. I think for a reason. And at the end of the day, we are women. We know it's not just about getting paid, but it's about that empowerment. The fact that you wake up in the morning, go and work and do something. And that's what the industrial parks are doing here in Ethiopia.
Speak to us, Coletta, about just the importance of these industrial parks when it comes to export. I mean, this being an export forum and not being the focus of this week, just how these industrial parks are playing into Africa's export agenda and what role they're playing.
Well, if you take a good example of Ethiopia, the last statistics from the Ethiopia Investment Commission, as per the last few months, they say from the over 9 industrial parks within the country, they have managed to get an income of $103 million from export of products from these industries. So, and that they're looking at that to grow because we are having more industrial parks being built. We are having some of them just being completed. Yesterday, we saw a piece of land that has been given over 350 square meters of land, kilometers of land that will have another industrial park. So there is that impact in terms of money that comes out from the products that are being exported from the ones that have been manufactured there. But beyond that, there is the value that goes to the community that works around there. We've mentioned employment, but also the supply of raw materials, because we know the people who come and invest in these industrial parks need things to use in terms of manufacturing and all that. So the local community or the Ethiopian community or the Ethiopian citizens are now getting business from the industrial parks. They can be able to supply some of these raw materials. And better than that is the fact that there's now technology transfer. One of the factories we visited yesterday that makes suits for export to Europe and USA told us that they have sent 50 of Ethiopian workers to China to learn this technology so that they can be able to come and impact that, because they cannot send everybody. So there's that technology transfer. And beyond that, there's the aspect that the community grows. I mean, there are all these social amenities that come up because of industries that are growing. So, and we're looking forward, as Ethiopia said, as it develops the Ethiopia-Djibouti railway as it seeks to get to Djibouti faster, all these industrial parks will be aligned along the railway. So we're looking at business developing just beyond manufacturing.
Thank you so much, Coletta. I'm going to hand over back to you, Karen. And so today that was She Trades and just hearing about women employment, what's happening here in Ethiopia. Tomorrow we're going to be focusing on youth and youth entrepreneurship. And again, employment is going to come as a huge issue there as well. And for the rest of the week, we're going to be speaking about partnerships and just how WEDF has been able to create those partnerships and bring the market, pretty much bring the market to the entrepreneurs that come to this conference. And so I'm going to hand back to you, Karen. Thank you for the opportunity to share what happened today at the WEDF 2019.
Okay, thank you very much. That was CGTN's Hannah Viviers there, along with Coletta Wanjoe, talking about the World Export Development Forum taking place in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Moving on to other news now. A UK Labour Party MP says corruption under South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, was enabled by international businesses and governments. Peter Hain raised the allegations against three big banks, HSBC, Standard Chartered and India's Bank of Baroda. Hain wants the institutions to now recover the money that they helped to launder, he says. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more on reaction to the charges at the state capture inquiry.
The reaction from the three named financial institutions was pretty much the same as it was when the story first broke in the international media. Complete and utter dead silence. In fact, Wayne Duvenage, the CEO of the organisation undoing tax abuse here in South Africa, also reminded us that the South African-based banks, that's Standard Bank, Nedbank, First National Bank and ABSA, should also be included in the dragnet, as they only acted towards the end of the alleged looting by the Gupta brothers. And they were also hiding behind that client confidentiality clause in the bank statements when they appeared before the Zondo Commission. In fact, the South African banks were testifying about meetings that were called by the disgraced Mineral Resources Minister Zwane after the decision to close those Gupta accounts had already been taken. The South African government, in fact, has also been quiet about the testimony yesterday by Lord Hain and the recommendations that he made. But this is not unusual, as the government hasn't had much to say about any of the ongoing commission findings or testimony or evidence thus far. Of course, that may all change when former President Jacob Zuma testifies. I'm Angelo Coppola for CG10 in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We are going to a short break. When we come back, Egypt embraces European cinema in 12th edition event. "11 days of continuous screening of European films have concluded in Egypt. 80 films from 40 countries have been on display during the 12th edition of the Panorama of European Movies that was founded in 2004. Here's CGTN's Adel El Mahrouhi with more.
French director Costa Gavras is discussing his film Adults in the Room with a full house theatre. For 15 years, Egypt has been hosting the Panorama of European Films. Never has this event witnessed such appeal from the audience.
It's important to show the European movies here in Cairo, because I believe your theater show especially American movies. So in Europe we're doing a lot of movies. I know you are interested about American movies, and especially about movies with action and special effects and that kind of movies. But European movies are different.
The event has been held in 9 Egyptian cities this year, making it one of the most spread cinema events in the country. It provides Egyptian film lovers with an opportunity to escape from Hollywood's dominance over theaters.
It's my 4th time to attend this European Panorama. It's very different from movies we are used to. They are mostly art house films, which focus on art rather than commercial gain. I find films here I couldn't watch anywhere else in Egypt. The Panorama is getting very popular. 2 years ago, I used to come right before the movie to get a ticket. Now I must get a ticket days ahead.
The event is even more appealing to Egyptian cinema students.
The event is very useful to my field of study. I also get much pleasure from watching such skillful movies. That's beside the academic benefits I get. I like how the European films are getting involved in humanitarian topics like depression, Down syndrome. It's extremely interesting to see how they can turn such complicated topics into a film.
The Panorama screens some of Europe's best film productions. It has given an exposure to 8 different categories of films, from rising directors to family topics and special screenings of European artists. And tickets are almost half the price of commercial movies.
Last year it had 15,000 spectators. This year I think the numbers will be much bigger, so there is a big audience that comes to Zawiya and is interested in the films that are being screened here. There are many films. This year it's almost 80 films, 40 countries, and not only European countries.
The Panorama of European Films was established in 2004. This 12th edition has so far been the most successful and widespread. Adil Al-Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Nigeria's Super Eagles on track for AFCON qualification out of Group L.